Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another exciting episode of the Great Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. I am the host of this podcast, and yes, we are your number one podcast for bringing you conversations of depth, down, and grief, and all the messiness that comes in between that with some amazing people out here doing some amazing things. Not only walk the walk, but talk the talk. And they're out here making a ripple effect in people's lives, changing their lives one heartbeat at a time. Now, before I bring on the next guest, I would like to say, if this is your first time tuning in, do me a favor, head on over to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, this is a live stream episode, so if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the comment section. We'll be sure to answer them as we go. Now, before I bring on my next guest, I got one more thing to say, that this is for educational purposes only. Now, without further ado, guys, help me welcome my next guest, Deborah Camp, to the show. Deborah, how you doing, friend?
Hi, Tony. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. Welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. I appreciate it.
Of course. Now, before we get started, introduce yourself. Tell people who you are, where you're from, and about the work that you do.
Sure. So, hi, everybody. My name is Deborah Camp. I am a Queens, New York-based mural artist, graphic designer, art educator, and self-published author. And I started this journey becoming an artist when I was 3 years old, stemming from my mother's side of the family. So my great-grandfather, my grandmother, my mother, and now me, we all are artists, and I got raised in this creative environment. And I followed it all throughout my schooling. And it was one of the things that helped save my life, actually, because when I was little, unfortunately, I was severely bullied in school by a lot of my peers for being different. I was the outcast. I was the kid that just did not fit in. So I would always come home and I would cry. But I would use my pen and my paper and my crayons, and I would draw out how I felt. And then as I got older, I would write out how I felt in the form of poetry. And that is what was my escape from being tormented in school in the outside walls. Inside the walls of my canvas, I could be anything I wanted. So that's what I did. I found the power through art to heal. And then as I got older, I wanted to self-publish my work. And I put my collection of all of my art and poetry into a book called Musings Diner, open 24/7. And I just released it on Amazon. And I have it out there to inspire others who went through similar traumatic experiences, whether it's you were being bullied or you went through some kind of personal struggle, obstacle, something that was stopping you from going for your dream. I want you to know that it's not impossible. It's impossible. I can go for my dream. You can. If I could do it, you can do it too. And that's what my work is out there for, to help you to see your beauty inside. Everybody out there is unique and special. And I want them to hear that.
I love that. Thank you for the work that you do and the art. I believe you're going to be sharing some of your art with us a little bit later, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes, I definitely can't wait to see your art. As being someone who is an artist myself, and I may not have the ability to draw anymore because I don't have the feeling in my hands, but I still be creative. We got a bunch of different programs that I can use now. I'm just like, oh yeah, I can do this, right? Which actually helps out a lot, and so because I don't know how not to be creative in this world, right? The world is a big, huge canvas that allows us to be freely expressive in those different things, no matter how you want to do it. Now, I want to ask a question, right? What were the effects of being bullied as a child, right? Because that can be detrimental to your self-esteem. It can be detrimental in how you show up in life and for yourself. You and I both know we have seen some of the most unfortunate outcomes of children who have been bullied and things like that. And I don't wish that for no one. How did you handle, I mean, aside from being creative and things like that, what were some of the things that you had to endure?
So it all started out gradually. So when I was 5, it started out with, "You got the cooties," and then the kids didn't want to play with me. And then when I turned into going into middle school, they said, "Oh, you're so ugly. You have pimples. You have a big nose. Nobody will ever love you." But then they became the most vicious when I hit high school. They said I shouldn't even exist. They said I'm not supposed to be here. I'm a mistake, that I should just be erased from this world and nobody would care if I was gone. So they said really vicious things, and it really affected how I saw myself and my self-esteem. It made me become a huge introvert. I was very quiet. I was very closed off. I was afraid to let people into my life. So I've been like that from a little kid all the way up to my mid 30s. It took me until my mid 30s to finally open up and say, you know what? I love doing art more than I'm afraid of letting people in. I'm going to take this chance. So that's what helped me overcome it. Like looking back and seeing that the bullies were just projecting their insecurities on me. I shouldn't take it personally. Like I wish I knew that when I was little. I wish I could talk to my 9-year-old self and give her a hug and tell her it's all going to be okay. You're going to be fine. You're going to come out through this horrible storm of all these nasty negative words, people saying you're not good enough, you'll never be anything. And then another bully in my life that I wanted to mention was a certain family member that I can't name their name, but it was somebody on my mother's side of the family who told my mom when she was a little kid, "Oh, you'll never make it as an artist. Just give it up." So my mother listened and unfortunately stopped drawing when she was a teenager. She told me the same story. And she said, when I was a teenager, "Deborah, you're never going to make it. Stop doing this. You're just going to live in a cardboard box. Get a real job like everybody else does." And I didn't listen. I was very stubborn. So even her, bullying in my own family on top of the bullying from the school. And then also in the form of when I'm painting murals, sometimes when people would pass by me and say, "What's your real job, honey? I see you're doing that for your school. Is that what you're doing for volunteer?" And I said, "No, this is my career." So I would get bullied from everybody, from all over, but it doesn't matter because if I believe in myself and I know what I'm doing is doing something positive for the world, these are just people projecting. That's all they're doing. They're projecting how they feel onto you. So I know that now as an adult.
Yeah, and sometimes it takes a long time to figure that part out, right? Because as a child, we're very influenced by other people and things like that. And I think in a lot of ways, as children, we don't know, we don't understand that, that's not okay and things like that. But it's that old saying, words can hurt you,
Oh
or
yeah.
sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you. It's just the opposite. And when you're a child and you want to make friends, because children don't know nothing about being discriminated against or things like that. That is a taught thing, and it usually comes from the people who are normally come from very, very dysfunctional families or being abused and things like that. And like you said, and I'm glad that you said this, it's very reflective. It's very, very reflective because they are a reflection of what they go through at home. And that's not okay. And I think more people should pay attention to that as well, because it can eliminate a lot of these children growing up and being dysfunctional members of society, so to speak, right? Without using their home or their lives as an excuse to go out here and commit atrocities in society, right? And leaving people, innocent people that had nothing to do with them or with nothing to do with what they had to go through, damaged in their path, right? What are your
Exactly.
thoughts on that?
No, I agree. These children need to be taught from a young age that this is not okay. You can't put others down, just because something is going on wrong inside of you. You need to help yourself by seeking a trusted adult. So if it's a teacher, maybe they can connect you to a counselor or just a family member, somebody who believes in you, who can help you go through what's bothering you as the bully, because you're not bullying for no reason. There's a reason why you are acting up and you are acting out, and it's because they want attention. They don't care if it's positive or negative attention because they feel starved. And now that I look back on it and I'm looking at all the kids in my head, I could see, they probably were neglected by their moms or dads or their cousins. They felt alone too. So they just wanted to tear me down with them because misery loves company. They
Right.
didn't understand why they were doing it. They were just doing it because they didn't know any better. So now I could see why they were doing it. And I really hope as adults now that they got the help that they needed. And if they have families that they understand, from my point of view, how it feels to have been bullied. Because chances are they might have been bullied themselves, but by family members or other people.
Right. I can definitely agree with that on so many different levels, because I have seen young men and young women grow up, and they become some of the most interesting people in life. Some that we call the narcissists, right? You know what I'm saying? It's like they justify their bad behavior, right? They justify their train of thought of thinking, and I get it. I do, because when people normalize abuse and dysfunction, it's kind of hard to put them in an environment where it goes against what they've been taught or how they've been treated. And the reason why I say that, because I do know individuals that seek out individuals that mistreat them so they can have a victim mentality and justify their actions towards them. And sometimes when they can't find that, they create individuals out of innocent people, right? How common do you think that is?
I think it's pretty common, unfortunately, in today's world. A lot of families project that they are the picture perfect family. They put it on Instagram, Facebook, that everything is fine. But, behind closed doors, there might be a big mess there of emotional trauma, and nobody's attending to it because they don't understand how to put it together because they're not seeking the help that they need. Because a lot of individuals, especially narcissist type individuals, they don't think they need help. And that's the problem. They don't see themselves as a broken person. They see themselves as, like, oh, the world deserves to turn to me, to look at me. That's how they see. And I'm going to get whatever I want no matter what. Like, this is the mentality, but it's like a sick, twisted way of thinking. And I don't blame them for that. They turned that way because of their environment, like we're saying. Raised in a toxic environment, and it's like a generational thing getting passed on to the next generation. But somebody has to stand up in that family and say, I'm going to end it. You can end that generational curse. There is a way to do that. But they need the right tools and the right help and gentle guidance to do that.
I totally agree. And which, when I was growing up, we have places like the Boys and Girls Club, right? Which was a great place to go, because you were actually able to be around other children. And they had good people, good grown-ups there that actually watched you and helped you, you know what I'm saying, as you developed and things like that. They got you into playing sports and things like, things that made you work together, and they taught you the value of working together. So I've seen a lot of people's lives change through said program. But also another program that was started when I was a child that became very popular was the Big Sisters, Big Brothers program, right? For youth. And if you grew up like I did, I grew up in poverty, right? We grew up on welfare. We grew up poor. And so, some of the things that you saw out on the streets, like the drug dealers, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? A lot of people modeled themselves behind that. And the big brothers, big sisters used to step in and go, hey, let's take these kids camping. Let's take these kids on road trips. Let's teach them how to make bow and arrows. Let's teach them fundamental things, you know what I'm saying? And they would take us out to some of the most beautiful places in Virginia. Like, we had a place called the Turtle Park, and they had big, huge turtles that roamed around this park, no matter where you went. And we were able to go and climb the trees and ride the turtles. And, they taught us how to fish and go clamming, and taught us how to crab. And it was those little things right there that brought a lot of us kids together. And I miss that for the kids nowadays, right? I really do. because of the benefits that it did give us, like the Boys and Girl Scouts, right? It was a great place to be if you was with the right Boys and Girl Scouts, right?
Exactly.
And
The positive mentor really makes a difference, even
right.
if you don't have it in your life. If you have somebody outside of your family that you could look up to, like you said, the big brother, the big sister, and they're
Mhm.
showing you positive ways to channel your energy instead of just twiddling your thumbs and not knowing what to do with all your time. They're giving you a positive outlet to discover a talent you have within you that you didn't even know existed because you didn't try it yet.
Yeah. Now I want to talk more. I'm going to talk a little bit more about your art. Are you self-taught in a lot of the things that you've done?
Yes. Definitely self-taught and also a combination of loving it so much that I just pursued it throughout the whole schooling. So from elementary, junior high, I was in the Bravo program for the arts, and high school, I went to a art program specifically out of my neighborhood because you had to be accepted to get in, and it was a good art program, and they took me. And then Queens College, where I got my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree. So it's a combination of always intuitively wanting to draw, wanting to paint, even before I went to school, watching my family paint all the time, and drawing and sketching and writing and the schooling all combined together.
Nice, nice, nice. I love that because again, you're not taught. And it reminded me of when I was a kid. I remember the first time that I had my first conflict of interest. I was young. I was so young, and we was probably in kindergarten or something like that. And I remember, the teacher told us to draw a family, and she went up to the board and she drew these stick figures and everything. And that's where my conflict happened because I'm looking at it going, but I didn't say anything because I was young and I didn't know if I was thinking the right way. But I remember, going home and just sitting down and I'm looking at this picture of these stick figures on my paper. And my mother looked at me. She said, "Baby, what's wrong with you?" I said, "Mama, it doesn't look
This is
Yes, yes, those, yes, exactly. Put the squiggly hair on it, and then look, don't have a father figure that has a mustache because now you got to put the the big eyebrows, and things like that. It did not sit right with me at all, Deborah. It did not. And I remember telling my mom, I said, "Look, it doesn't." She goes, "What do you mean don't see?" I was like, "Because we don't look like that. Like we have your face don't look round like this. And you don't have hair. You don't have squiggly hair." And so my mother, being a woman that she was at the time, she says, "Well, baby, if we don't look like that, then why don't you draw us the way that we're supposed to look?" And I think it surprised her when she saw me sit around and I looked at everyone and I was going, we have arms, we have legs,
Mhm.
and they look like this. And so I learned how to draw the human body first, and then I learned how to put clothes over top of the human body. So I used to dress my pictures up that way, but I would make the body, very light to where I can go through and erase it
Right.
to where, and arms folding, the crinkles in your hands, the curl in your lips and the eyes, all of that stuff. I found it always fascinating and beautiful. And I think I was around 7 or 8 when I started really exploring shadows. And I would look at people in the sunlight and I would watch them when the night came and the lights were on,
Mhm.
the different lighting and things like that, and how it really just made people more realistic. And I knew right then and there that I wanted to do that, right? And then of course, I love comic books, so I was always fascinated with the comics with the big muscles and
Mhm.
things like that. Because you can dream, right? You can dream
Right,
of being a
exactly.
hero, but most importantly, you it gave you the creativity to create the superhero that you oftentimes would want to be. You didn't have to follow your regular Superman or Batman and things
Batman,
like that,
no,
right? You didn't have
exactly.
to do that. And so I knew then, I was like, man, I could create a whole new universe of this right here that's mine, and I can feel safe within it. And like yourself, Deborah, I learned how to draw my feelings and no one really paid attention to it, right? Like if I was heartbroken or something like that, I used to draw horses that used to be crying and things like that. Like it was, we kids and things like that. What are
Right.
your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts?
Well, I feel that kids, before they're able to vocalize how they're feeling or to write it, I feel like it's easier for them to express their way visually, because
Mm,
it's very intuitive for a child to get a crayon, a piece of paper, and they could draw the tear coming down from the eye. And, you could read a lot into those drawings about how a child is feeling. That's why there's art therapy out there, where if a
mm,
child is afraid to verbalize anything that happened to them, you can get it out of them what's going on in their head through the drawing that they made. And you could see it that way. And that explains a lot what they're drawing, because they might not be able to say it, but they can say it in a safe way to draw it.
right. How did you, because you've experienced your own fair share of grief as well. How did
Yeah.
you express your grief? Like, because a lot of times we don't learn how to express grief, right? Because a lot of times we're not taught to express it.
Mm-mm.
And a lot of times, and again, just like yourself, a lot of times people never pay attention to what we do. And so, how did you learn to express? But first off, let's talk about the sort of grief that you've experienced, and then I
Well,
want to dive into how did you express that?
well, I have just my mother right now as my family and my fiance, because my biological dad, he was never there for me. So, even though he had me with my mother, he never married my mom. He was never there for me. So he wasn't a real father to me. So, he was pretty much an absentee, as you would call it. So that made me very heartbroken, not having that father figure in my life. And I'm the only child. So my mom had to be my mom and my dad when I was growing up. And, I had my nonna and my nono, so that was my grandmother and my great grandfather, but they died of cancer. One of them was 68 and I was only 6 when my grandmother died. And my great grandfather, my nono, he was 104, but he died when I was 8. So I lost almost everybody by the time I was 8 years old. So it was just me and my mom, me being 8 years old, all the way up to me being in my, early to mid 20s when she met my stepfather. And my stepfather, Michael, he was a great guy. He's very funny. He was everything I wanted in a father, because he was there for me. He would come with me when I painted my murals, take pictures, show off pictures of me and my art. He was very proud because he didn't have children of his own. So he saw me as a stepdaughter, but unfortunately, he had a heart attack in front of me, actually, and he passed in 2014. He was only 53 years old, and it was very traumatic. So, for that, I went to therapy. I'm not afraid to say it. I feel that if you need help, you should go and seek it. If you're struggling with something that's too big for you to deal with on your own. So I did
Mhm.
seek talk therapy, to help myself process those feelings, because it was just a shock. Like the way he went, he was fine one day and he was gone the next. It was just very shocking. So that was very hard on me, and like nobody could replace him. Like he was the only dad I knew. My real biological dad was never really there for me. And then I found out he passed away also. So I literally just have my mom, as my family. She's my everything to me. So,
Right.
she helps me a lot and I help her, to go through everything we've went through. And we usually bond through art. When I'm painting my mural, she comes with me. She gets a lot of joy out of helping me, watching. And I try to inspire her, with the poetry I do, and be there for her. And I want to be strong for her. I want to show that we can get through this together, because we shared both of these experiences. They were very traumatic for both of us. My mom basically became an orphan when she was in her 30s. So, it was very hard for her. And for me too, to see all that. So, of course, with me, like I'm a crier. I'm not ashamed to cry. If something's bothering me, it's gonna come out. The waterworks are gonna come out. Because it's very toxic to hold in how you're feeling. Like if you want to just pretend you're okay and put on a show, that's very dangerous to do, because it raises your cortisol levels. You're holding everything in. So I'm the type, if something's bothering me, you're going to know right away. It's going to come out in tears. It's going to come out in my writing, in my art, and that's how I process it. And I want to help others. I feel like by helping others, who went through similar experiences, it sort of helps heal me too, in a way, because, I'm sharing my story, and then other people come out in the audience when I do the open mics, for example, and they will tell me similar experiences that they went through. And then they thank me for sharing, and I thank them for sharing, and we learn from each other. And that's how we help through a community.
I love that. I love that. We got a few people joining in. We got my little sister over here, Dear Psycho Pump. She has a podcast as well, and she threatened me earlier, so I'm calling her out on social media on this live right now, because she threatened me. And I want people to know that she threatened me, and that's that way. If something was to happen, people know that she's the one who did it. Just putting it out there. She's already me like, why are you doing that? No. She told me to bring it. But that's all right. That's all right. You better be glad I'm busy right now. Okay, you better be glad I'm busy. No, thank you for joining in as always. So my next question would be, how did that change your art, right? Because there's a progression there, and being someone who loves art myself, I know that every time I've gone through something, it changed my art that much more, right? Maybe with some details, maybe with the intensity that I drove it, maybe the way that I started like coloring in things, right? You know what I'm saying? Because it's very reflective of our emotions and things like that. And when you have a hard time expressing yourself, you sometimes use colors to paint or express those things. It's like I think I said it with you. Pocahontas, can you paint with the colors of the wind, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you think about that right there, it just carries a different definition for you. So how did going through those things change the way that your art you express yourself in your art?
Well, I feel like it made me just want to pursue the art even more and like pour myself even more into my pieces. Like my pieces are more of an extension of myself, because like I'll put
Mhm.
in how I'm feeling, what I'm going through, and like each one is a very personal thing for me. When I create it, it's not just like a cookie cutter thing. I'm creating it out of what's going on in here, and then I pour it onto the canvas or wherever it goes, or if I write it out. So I feel like it just motivated me more to keep creating, to create even more like on a regular basis. Because if you just skip days and you have an idea in your head and you ignore it, sometimes the idea will just escape you. But if you write it or draw it down right away, those are like those little glimpses of something that's subconsciously going on in your mind. And you got to capture it before it leaves you. So that's what I do. I'm always writing down notes. I'm always sketching little things out. Like I'm surrounded by papers in here. So
Saw that.
that's what happens. Like I draw them out, I write them out, and capture them. And I want to pour myself into everything I do.
I love that. I definitely love that, because it's a true gift to be able to give that to the world. And that was one of the things. Now, like I said, I used to love drawing when I was a kid, and it taught myself a lot, especially when I got into drawing comic books, how to do colors, and how to manipulate and what that looked like to have that more 3D look. Like I honestly believe I was ahead of my time when I did that, because I was like, oh, this 3D thing, I got this, because I knew how to shade. I knew that two things. I could use pen, right?
Mhm.
And I used to love those felt tip pens and everything. I used to love those because I love the way the darkness of it, and you can change the edges of it and things like that. But you can also use it as shade in. So you put that in there, and then you can throw some color in there, and it actually made it pop out that much more, right? So I love that right there. I used to love that. So I guess my next question would be, when was your first mural? When was the first time you did a mural and actually spent time and actually said, you know what, I like this?
Oh, yes. The journey goes back to July 2011. And it's funny how it happened. It's kind of fate. I feel like fate made this happen because my intent in school was to become a children's book illustrator. That's where I always saw my path going. I never saw murals in the future. I didn't think about that. I knew I loved art, but I always wanted to get into the book form of art, creating illustration. So I'm looking on Craigslist and I'm looking under the gigs and I see a gig, somebody's looking for a window artist to paint for their pet shop, to paint on their window directly for the spring and summer theme. And they said, send us examples of your work and if you've done this or not before. So I was honest with them. I told them I never painted on a window before, but I've painted very large canvases and I love to paint animals. That's one of my favorite subjects because I'm a huge animal cats my whole life. So this was calling to me. So I gave it my best shot. I did the illustration for them of their team winning versus the other team losing. So it was like a baseball scene. And you see the pet shop that I was painting for get the score of 100 and the other team lost by a lot. They had a 0. So they had 0 home runs. So they really liked that to illustrate how their pet shop was superior. And they chose my work despite me not ever painting a window before and being only in my early 20s. They said, you know what, let's take a chance on you. Let's see how it goes. So I invested money that I didn't have at the moment just to see what could happen because I really believed something could happen from this and I felt like I would enjoy this and I did. I love painting large scale. It was 15 feet long, feet tall, it was pretty big and I worked on it for a week because it was my first time painting a window, so it took me a lot slower than it takes me now. And then they commissioned me to do their other window. 300 windows, walls, I'm doing it. So, for all different businesses, and I never stopped. I just kept picking up momentum. Just kept going, this way, that way. Oh, you paint a wall. I said I never did it before, but yes, I would like to paint your wall. Somebody gave me the chance there too. Oh, could you paint a menu board for my restaurant? I said I never did that before, but I can do it for you. And somebody else gave me a chance. Oh, could you do a graphic design for my website? I never did it before. Somebody else gave me a chance. So, oh, could you teach art, for our children, and then I did that. So it's like it kept spiraling, into this way. And I love it. I know where it's going to take me. It's like you never know what's around the corner. Like I was saying earlier, you never know. Very exciting.
I love that. I love your passion for that as well. Because that makes me excited as well. That I'm constantly like, oh my God, I could definitely feel that excitement, that passion. And when was the first time you wrote a poem and put it out into the world for others to see? Because a lot of times, and the reason why I ask this, because I love writing poems too, so I'm revealing some of the things that I like to do in my spare time, but I never share them with anyone. I think I've only shared maybe one poem. The rest of them I kind of keep tucked away and things like that. Like it's my poems reflect my own personal journey and things like that, and I still to this day enjoy doing that. And so when was the first time that you wrote a poem and shared it with other people, right? Yeah.
Oh, so yes, the way this goes is I've been writing since I was about 13, but I didn't share it with anybody at first. It was just for my journal. And then I wanted to share it in public. After the pandemic happened, everybody was very isolated, and I felt isolated too. Things were finally starting to open again, including a local open mic near me called the Music Exchange, where every month they host an open mic where people could read their poetry, sing songs, show their art. And I wanted to try it. I said, what about if I bring one of my poems when I was 16 and share it with everybody? So I did that in 2022. I was a little nervous at first because I never was on stage before and I'm very shy and introverted, but that's when the switch in me happened from being this shy, closed off person to being an open book. I went on the stage, I read my poem when I was 16. People loved it. They connected to it. They clapped. They stood up, and I just felt all the love, which I never felt. I never felt like that before. I never felt people like the true appreciation for my written work. I've always felt it from my visual work, right? Because everybody knows me as the window artist and mural artist, but they didn't know the other side of me that I also love to write. So I shared that, along with one of my drawings, and they invited me back. They had me as one of the features, and from there, I just kept going on the stage. I started performing them. I started bringing props in there, like swinging it all around. performing it. And yeah, it's exciting. Then I did that in the library. I had my art showcase there, and I love doing it. It makes me happy. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not shy. I used to be very quiet and shy. I'm not like that anymore.
Well, that's always a good thing, and I love that energy. I do love that energy that you have right there, and which leads me now because I can see you teaching children how to use art in a way as expression, right? Because one thing I do know, children are very expressive if put in the right environment or the right atmosphere, right, to where
Exactly.
they're safe and things like that. And I'm going back to what you said earlier, where you wanted to be a children's book illustrator and things like that. And have you ever sat down with your, I mean, pretty sure you have, but have you ever sat down with children and helped them use art as a way to express what's going on in their home life?
Most definitely. A lot of my projects that I did in the schools and in different programs, they're very open-ended. So instead of
Mm,
being very structured, that you have to do the painting, for example. Well, this was for an adult painting class, but it's something similar. Like, I wouldn't say do it this way and only this way. I would never say that. So, for example, with the cherry blossom tree, I would have the kids work on it as well. And I would ask them, where do you want your tree to live? How big do you want the tree? Do you want it to be a really big, strong tree, or do you want it to be a tiny baby tree? I would ask them like how they want to make it. What colors do you like? How does the tree feel? Is the tree happy? What's their name? I would kind of personify the tree. So, I would have, a discussion with each one of them. And then if they're asking me about technical things, I would show them again on the board how to do it, if they needed any help. But I would always engage them, and I would have all the supplies out for them where, they could take the supplies and use them how they would like. I wouldn't tell them you have to use only this amount of that or that color. They're free to express themselves in my art class. And I do that also for adults as well. I feel like you shouldn't make it a structured, rigid environment because I had teachers like that and I was not happy in those classes. I felt very suffocated. So I did the antithesis. I did for the teachers that I looked up to who would teach similar to the way I teach, very open-ended, very dynamic type of class where there's a lot of energy and there's a lot of positivity and discussion with everybody, interacting with each other.
yeah, I love that. I love that. Now, which leads me to my next question. Because your mother, how do you ever inspire your mother to pick up a paintbrush or pen again to start doing the things that she loved doing and bypassing what she was told when she was a kid? Do you ever give that inspiration to her to where she, and the reason why I ask because I would love to hear, saying, yeah, me and my mom is about to do this, right? You know what I'm saying? Just
Right.
judging from the history that you have. But do you ever inspire her or other people to do the same? Like go out there and explore your dreams. See where it's at.
Oh,
Reason
definitely.
like,
So
well,
with
yeah,
my mom, with my mom, when I was little, I would ask her to draw with me, to draw caricatures of people that we would know in the neighborhood. And, it would be fun to draw together. She would do that with me when I was little. But then, she would stop after because she's, very sad and upset about everything that's happened. Now, as an adult, she sees what I'm doing, but it's still very hard for me to get her to pick up the paint. I did have a painting class with her where she was my student, which was fun. She was actually one of my pupils in the library, and I got to show her how to paint a Northern Lights painting. So that was a lot of fun, and she actually was smiling genuinely, like she really seemed to have enjoyed it. So that brought me a lot of joy, to see her happy doing something that she used to love to do. She used to love to paint. Animals also like me, similar things. She was a big Disney fanatic like me, so always wanting to paint 101 Dalmatians, Lady and the Tramp. So with her, it's still a work in progress to get her to fully open up again. And I have brought her to some writing workshops as well. So my local library offers that. So sometimes, because she used to like to write stories too when she was little, she used to make up stories about animals and their friendships and their struggles. And
mhm.
she stopped for a while. But this writing class helped us to bond together to discover that part of her that she's kept hidden for like 40 years. So now it's starting to come out again. So that makes me happy. And as far as other people, it happens a lot. I'm speaking about what I'm doing with people, when I'm painting the window and they tell me, oh, I used to paint, but I don't do it anymore. I'm like, oh, what? You should pick it up again. I want to see what you can do. What's the favorite subjects you like? And what is something else that you like to do as a kid? Because sometimes they say, oh, I don't know how to draw. I wish I could draw. I'm like, yeah, but you do have a gift. Everybody has one. And then they would start talking about how they love to cook, and they don't do it as much anymore. I'm like, well, pursue it again. You could, take some time in the kitchen, cut up the vegetables. Maybe you can make a stew, because that's another thing. I love to cook also. So I connect a lot with people on that as well. So I just, I'm an open book. When people come up to me, I tell them my whole story about, what I went through, and I hope it inspires them. So.
This leads me to my next question. Do you feel that art can be a great way to help others heal in their trauma, their addiction, mental health, and their emotions? And if so, how? What are some of the steps that they can use in order to heal those different areas in art therapy?
It definitely helps a lot. I feel like it gives somebody an outlet to express how they're feeling, what they're going through. It helps them discover something within them, their subconscious thoughts. Because sometimes if you're struggling with something like a depression or an addiction, if you sit down, maybe set 15 minutes aside from the day and just, either free write or free draw, meaning draw or write whatever comes to your mind first. Don't worry about making any mistakes. They'll discover something about themselves, that maybe this heavy thing that they're carrying on their shoulder, this burden, they don't realize like how heavy that thing is, because it's been building and building and building over the years. So if they take the first step, just to sit down, 15-minute timer, just draw it out, write it out, or however you want to express it, whatever way, or music, if you love to sing, sing it out, or play the piano, play it out, like however you want to express it, find that tool first and see if it works for you. Because people have many different ways to express their feelings and emotions. And it makes them feel, validated, because now they're seeing something within themselves and they're acknowledging it. Now it's not something hidden in the background anymore. It's something in the foreground. You can see it. And that's the first step. If you can see it and you see there's something going on that's not right, that's bothering you, now it could help you to do the next steps. What are you going to do next? Are you going to seek help? Are you going to talk to a friend? What are you going to do next? To get positive behaviors built up to negate the things that have been bothering you.
Now, do you ever see any of the children that used to bully you now as adults, and be able to share your artwork with them? And because and the reason why I ask, because sometimes when we've gotten to a place of healing, we see the people that have changed us or helped change our lives, and we often do one or two things. We often look for time to really lash back out at them and kind of tell them like, you did this and and everything else. And a lot of times we look at the situation and go, you know what, thank you for what you did to me. You helped me become this right here. And to have the sheer look of shock on their face, when, because I can only imagine somebody walking up to you and you're over there painting this big old mural on the wall, and they're coming up and going, Deborah, oh, I remember you when we were kids. And they look at them and go, yeah, you used to bully me. And all of a sudden they're looking at what you're creating, and and they have no words. Like, I think that is the best form of revenge.
I agree. I just have not experienced that yet, because I don't see the people anymore in my neighborhood that bullied me. They probably moved, wherever they went. But the irony, the funny thing that you're saying is to thank them. Let me read the introduction of who I dedicate this book to. Musings Diner 24, open 24/7. I wrote this. I dedicate this collection of written and visual works to my mother, my biggest cheerleader and my rock of inspiration that has watered and nurtured my love for the arts since it was a seedling, my great-grandfather, grandmother, my stepdad, my fiance, my friends, and most of all, to my bullies. For without their presence in my life, these writings and paintings would have never come to fruition. So I actually dedicated this to them, most of all, because literally, I wouldn't be the person I am today without them.
Right. I love that. I love that. That's if they ever pick it up, you should put in there. Yep, I did it.
There you go. They know who they are. I didn't name any names because there's too many of them, but they know who they are. If they see me, they'll remember what they did, and they'll say, "Oh wow, that's what happened to Deborah. That's what happened to that shy, weird little girl."
Do you think that you had to go through all of that stuff in order to be who you are today? Because in a lot of ways, like when I hear about children being bullied, it hurts because I was never bullied, right? I was the guy that you didn't want to bully. If you try to bully me, I'll just fight you, right? And but do you think that you had to go through that extreme to be who you are today?
I think so. I really, now that I look back on it, because my life could have had a totally different alternate timeline, like how in Back to the Future Part 2, there's an alternate timeline, if they went back in time and changed things, but sometimes it's not always for the better. So let's say my biological dad married my mom. Let's say I never got bullied. Would I be as passionate about what I do? Would I have escaped as much into my art? Or would that just have become a hobby for me or something? Like, I don't think, there are mistakes in life, the way fate has made things. I feel like some of us, we go through these hard things and there's only one of two ways it's going to work out. You're either going to let it break you or you're going to do something about it and you're going to make sure that it wasn't for nothing. And that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to be out there, put myself out there, put my work out there to show that everything I went through, there was a reason for it, to help other people, other little 16-year-olds, 9-year-olds that went through what I went through, to show you can overcome this. It's not the end of, your story, that these people are bullying you. You could keep going. Don't let these people pull you down and bring you down with them. So that's why I'm doing this. That's why I'm here. I exist. I'm still here today, and they didn't win because I'm still here.
What would be some words that you would give a child right now that is really struggling in their self-esteem, in their mental health, because of the bullying that they're going through in school?
Well, I would tell them, to never, I would say, to never give up on your dreams. You are a beautiful, brilliant individual with a lot to offer to the world. Don't let them dim your light. And if you need help, if you're afraid to speak up, to your mom or dad, talk to a counselor in the school, talk to a teacher in the school, let them know what's going on. Because if somebody knows what's going on, they can help you. And we can't always fight our battles alone. Sometimes we need help. We need, how Superman and Batman, they have like sidekicks, right? We need our sidekick. You are the superhero, I would tell them. Let's get our sidekicks too. That way we could conquer the enemy. We could, rise up and, we don't have to be afraid anymore. Everything is going to work out in the end for you. That's what I'm going to let them know.
I love that. And which leads me to this question. What would you tell those bullies out there that are doing this to their classmates to get them to open up their eyes to what they're actually doing before it becomes too late? Because we live in 2025 and the bullying has to stop. It hurts my heart every time I look at something and another young child has unaligned themselves because of what others are doing to them. And it seems like it never ends. It seems like it never stops for them. It seems like no matter where they turn, there's always people out there trying to hurt them. what would you tell those individuals out there that are bullying those children right now?
Right away, you have to see from the other person's shoes. I would ask them, how would you feel? If somebody was doing this to your mom or to your brother, you have to understand that words are very hurtful. And then I would actually show them examples of what happened to other kids similar to the kid they're bullying. What's the end result? And sometimes it's like you said, the person's not here anymore. And the kid has to realize that what they're doing now, it can be stopped before that happens. They need to take responsibility and acknowledge what they're doing is wrong. It's a wrong thing to do. You don't hurt another human being. You don't hurt an animal. You don't hurt a living sentient person being, because you're destroying their life, their future. And I would tell them personally what I went through too. I would share my own story to them of when I was 5, somebody just like you hurt me and made me cry, made me sad, and made me go in the corner all the time and think I wasn't good enough. And it almost destroyed me. It almost broke me. But I survived. But not everybody can survive this. So you have to realize what you're doing is very harmful and hurtful. And you have to find a way to cope with this by also reaching out to help. Remember how I said we have sidekicks as the ones being bullied? Well, the bullies themselves could also get the same power from those same sidekicks. They need to speak to the counselors, the teachers about what they're doing. And they need to see what's really going on in them. If they're coming from the broken home, or, what's really bothering you, I would ask the bully, what's going on? I would find out the mentality of the dynamics of the family to see where's this coming from. And then from there, lead them to the appropriate help.
I love that. I love that. Which leads me to my next question. This is going to sound kind of extreme when I say this, but when I hear about these children that make permanent decisions over temporary situations, I often think about the consequences that should be had. Like if you go out here and you knowingly are bullying someone else because they're smaller than you, because they're different from you, and that person that you're doing this to decides to take matters into their own hand, I think there should be consequences so people will learn that this is not the way that you do it. Now, granted, when I was coming up, somebody did that, you just punched them in the mouth. You had to fight them, right? But not everybody's that way. But if there are something, there is something like that happens, I think that child that did the bullying or children that did the bullying should be held accountable. And I hate to say this, but I'm tired of it. But they should be brought up on charges. To be taught that they can't do that because they are responsible in so many different ways of doing that to that other person that had nothing to do with that, or should not be in their wrath of brokenness, so to speak, right? They should not have to be the blunt of your brokenness because you don't know how to deal with what's going on either in your home life or any aspect of your life. We need to learn better ways of dealing with things without turning each other down. But again, those are just my thoughts on it, right? And I know there may be somebody out there that may not agree with what I'm saying, and that's fine too. But I think it has to be, if you're going to go out there and do something like that, the lesson should fit your actions.
There definitely should be consequences. Bingo. There needs to be some type of consequence. You cannot just expect to treat somebody like that to the point of breaking their spirit and breaking their family as a consequence, because you're not only losing that person, the person you bullied, you literally broke their whole family. You broke their mother, their father, their cousins. You broke their friends. You broke an entire world, basically. So It's a chain event. It's not only you're losing the person, you're losing the person plus all the people who loved that person. And
Yeah.
it's just a horrible thing, it really hurts me when I hear stories like that, because I could understand from hearing those words over and over when I was 16, telling me that I shouldn't be here, just, you should just disappear. Like, I don't even want to say that word because it's just very triggering for me. That's why I'm using different words to mention what we're
Understood.
talking about.
Right.
So, because it's very traumatic for me, to remember that, what they said and what they imagined. So for me, I definitely believe a consequence needs to be, they need to be held accountable somehow. They can't just do it and be told, oh, you shouldn't do it again, because then that just dismisses the whole life of that person that they took away from us. You
Understood.
have to do a proactive thing to make sure this is never going to happen again, and to be an example to others who are bullying. Whoa, I shouldn't do this, not just because there's a consequence, but it's because it's not the right thing to do.
Right. No, I definitely appreciate that. And, thank you for sharing that as well. Which leads me now to my exciting part of the conversation. Show us some of the work that you do.
Sure. So I have a small painting I did here. It's actually in my book too. It's called Think Outside of the Box. So I hand painted this on glass, and I have a poem I wrote about it as well. Well, this one I made from, hand painting it on glass, and I also put mixed media on it. So I put cotton balls in it, and it's sort of like a Jack in the Box. So you spin it, pop goes the idea. So it's trying to show society that we shouldn't box ourselves in. We should be innovators of the world, because we all have the potential to do it. So a lot of my work in my book, besides overcoming bullying, is about encouraging ideas, this type of outside of the box thinking, because this is what the world really needs right now. We need these people out there to innovate, to create, to go forward, and to inspire others that might have some kind of unconventional idea, but it needs to go out there. So that's what that work was about. And this is another one I did. It's a small hand-painted piece. So you know how they have the hopscotch? So instead of numbers, I wrote I am. So I am loved, kind, inspired, resilient, brave, unique, smart, thankful, and unstoppable. So, you could hop to the game of hopscotch that way, to hop on a positive word, to remind yourself of what you could be. So I did that one. And in my book, I have a lot of illustrations as well. So Musings Diner open 24/7. I have some paintings and drawings in here. So let me show you some others. So these are other positive affirmations that I painted. So I made the whole hair of words, of thoughts. So the whole hair, it would say, I am hopeful, I am determined, I have potential, I will overcome. And then I have Fawn of the Dawn. So this is
I like that.
Thank you. I like to use a lot of psychedelic colors. I'm a hippie child of the 60s in spirit. I feel like my soul was there in 1969. I really like that era. This is Forever a Child at Heart. So this is about going back to your childhood, how it's like a story and you can go back anytime. And there's written pieces to each part that I'm showing you. Oh, and this is a self-portrait I did called Dueling Duality of My Reality. So the portrait is literally split in half, where it's sad on one side and happy on the other. It's sad in the first part because it was bullied, the person, but in the other side, she's happy because she's fulfilled her role as an artist and a spreader of joy in the world. So that's just like some examples of my art. And this one is the Empty Grief Rocking Chair. So I drew this actually after my stepdad Mike passed, to represent how I was feeling. How, even though his spirit, his body's gone, but his spirit is still here. So it's symbolized by a chair that's rocking. Even though you don't see anybody in it, the person's memories are still there. So it's symbolic of that.
I love that. And share one of your poems with us, please.
Sure. So let me get one for you. It's called Past Loses the Steering Wheel.
Oh.
So, I like to use a lot of metaphors in my poem. This one does not have an illustration, but I want to read it to you. So, Past loses the steering wheel. Dear past, thank you for making me strong, to help me find where I belong. You have seen my darkest hours and my brightest victories. You have witnessed my entire life's history. It is now time to make peace and forgive those that have tried to break me. The bullies, the exes, the naysayers, I can now see without bidding you peace. You will resurrect yourself into a tsunami wave. You will persistently pour into my present day, therefore ruining my future. I have expressed this so many times. I long to pretend you never existed. Like a tumor, you have rapidly grown, and you have made your ghastly existence known. You cast a shadow on my sunniest days. Radiant beams, all I saw was a haze. I will no longer ignore your presence. I am not scared of you, not even hesitant. You have my undivided attention. Am I keeping you in an intense suspension? What I desire from you is understanding, forgiveness, and peace. Are those grants within your reach? I once wanted to cast you into oblivion because I felt our clashing was done. That was just an instinctual gut reaction stemming from resentment and unsatisfaction. Instead, I will do this the dignified way. Each time you try to pry, I will overshadow you with the goodness in my life, the present and the future, joining forces, intertwining together as one. No longer can you direct my life's course. It is now rebegun. Love is stronger than negativity in this universe. As of this second, this very second, I hereby declare that you will no longer drive how I feel. You, my past, have lost control of the steering wheel. I am designating a new captain, the one shining with positive energy, unconditional love, sense and synergy with the present and the future. This trio is leading the way. Dear past, you will be kept at bay. Granted that you are a part of my life, you will still ride along. In the back seat is where you belong. Your power no longer exists. You are just a memory, a part of my life's documentary. All of the monstrous things that you made me believe. What part of you were trying to deceive? I now know that you are wrong. You called me weak. I am strong. You called me ugly. I am beautiful. You called me a loser. I am clearly winning. You said I deserve to be alone. I've never felt more loved. I know you will resent the back seat. All you ever known was how to inflict mental anguish on repeat. I know your twisted little game. The jig is up, my soul you cannot gain. You can no longer control me. 2023 and indefinitely onward is a year of hope. You'll see. I will continue to follow the path of happiness, to creativity, to unconditional love. The bonds I formed will grow stronger. My talent will flourish as it becomes nourished. And you, my past, have the task to watch. Now I feel sorry for you. You will watch as you lie in the backseat of my life. It's my turn to take the steering wheel, to help myself heal. The future has so much in store to reveal. The end.
I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You're welcome.
So now my next question would be, how can people find you?
Oh, you can find me on my social media, on my Instagram account. It's called Art by Deb Camp, ARTBYDEBCAMP. And if you have Facebook, it's Art by Deborah Camp. So ARTBYDEBORAHCAMP. And my book, Musings Diner, open 24/7. I have it on Amazon as a paperback, hardcover, or ebook.
I love that. Now, one last question for you before we wrap this up. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh, I have it. Actually, that's funny that you mentioned that, because in my book, I actually have an illustration of that. So I would call it, let's see, where is he? He is right here. Empathy.
Oh, I love it.
Empathy would be my superpower, because that is something that we all need in this life, to understand how others feel. And I feel that I have a lot of it because of what I went through. So I could understand if somebody's in pain. I want to help them heal. I want to be an open ear to listen, a shoulder to cry on. So I feel that empathy is definitely one of my superpowers.
I love that. I love that. And well, we're going to say, as we wrap this up, Thank you for coming on. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for sharing your artwork with us. Such beautiful work that you do, your poem. Thank you for sharing who you are, your heart, your passion, and your knowledge and your drive to keep going forward, right? That's that strength that we want for everybody out there. And, for everybody else out there struggling right now, if you have a child, or even yourself, go check her out, please. You know what I'm saying? Support her book, and let her know Tony sent you as well. And, so with that being said, guys, this is going to conclude this episode of the Grief Let's Talk About It podcast. You guys already know who it is. This is Tony Lynch. And, we got some more people. I don't know if I have anybody coming next week. I got a week-long event, so if you guys don't hear from me, that's what I'm going to be doing. But I'm going to try to sneak in one or two throughout the week, but we'll be back over the weekend. You guys already know. I'll be back tomorrow. I got four going on tomorrow, so tune in for that. And for everyone else out there, guys, thank you for always allowing me to bring these stories, these amazing people to you guys, and for your love and support that you guys always show me. And of course, if you have not already, do me a favor. Head on over to their YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell notification so you'll be notified every time that we drop a new episode. But most importantly, please share it with someone who can benefit from the conversation that we have, because we're changing people in the way that they heal, one heartbeat at a time. With that being said, guys, I'm out. Peace. See you next one.